This week, I want to talk to you about analysis before you answer your response questions to give you an idea of some things to consider in those response questions. So, when we talk about theme, what you want to avoid is just the one word statement. A theme in the story is technology. Well, that's not really a claim. What we're looking for is what the story is saying about technology or what the story is saying about fantasy versus reality. And in service of that, I want to give you some thoughts about the various literary elements and the various components of the story to think about as you're making your own conclusions about theme in this story. So, first of all, plot. One of the most important parts of plot to look at is conflict. And of course, we have character versus character conflict, but I encourage you to think about character versus nature. Okay. What role does this house play in the family's life? Is the house just a backdrop, or has the house replaced a certain natural part of these children's upbringing? Um, the house is the one that feeds them, bathes them, ties their shoes, entertains them. And at one point, Lydia says, I feel like I have no purpose. And you want to question, well, has the house technology become replaced that sort of natural relationship between mother and child or parents and child? And what does that mean? What conclusion do we draw from that? What is the story saying about that? Another thing to consider in this story is character. So, the characters of Peter and Wendy. That is an allusion to Peter Pan. And what is the story of Peter Pan? Well, it's a story of Peter who wants to take Wendy and her siblings away from their parents to live in Neverland. And what is Neverland? It's a place where they never have to grow up. There's no boss of them, there's no parents. They get to live in this fantasy world in immortal childhood, essentially. And you want to think about, well, what does that mean? What conclusions can we draw about the story? That there is this very interesting allusion to Peter Pan and the characters' names. As well, in terms of character slash setting, the house. What is the house? Is the house a setting or is the house a character? And if you remember, when we talked about character, the two things that something has to have in order to be a character is the ability to think and the ability to make decisions. Is the house sentient? Is the house able to make decisions? For example, when the parents are trapped in the room, we know the house can open the door. Um, is that a coincidence? Are the children forbidding the house from doing it, or is the house making decisions on its own? Um, these are things to be thinking about in terms of what sort of conclusions we can draw about what's going on in the story. And finally, I would mention symbol to you all. So one of the major symbols in the story are the lions, and lions are a conventional symbol in literature, meaning they appear time and time again. And lions are a conventional symbol for power and authority. So I would ask you, who has the authority in this house? Do the parents have it? Do the children have it? Does the house have it? And why are the children fixated on this scene with the lions? And to answer that, I would offer you this. These kids could go into their virtual reality nursery and see anything in the world. They could fly on dragons. They could, go to magical places. And they are watching what is the equivalent of National Geographic over and over and over. Why? One thing to think about is the idea of fantasy versus reality. Has fantasy and this escapism become such a large part of these children's lives that what they're actually craving is nature, is reality, is the raw world in front of them? And the fact that they're fixated on these lions suggests, of course, that they are fixated on authority. They are fixated on power. And is it what does that mean? What conclusions can we draw about the story? Now, there's a lot beyond these things in the story to think about, but I want you to keep these elements in mind as you answer your response questions and really think analytically about what are the different thematic conclusions we can draw. This story doesn't just mean that technology is bad, right? Or obsession with technology is bad. There are a lot of layers to look at here. So think critically, think with complexity, and see what you can come up with.